So my main goal for today was to look at the symbolism of the beastie in these two chapters. It's of course beast from water and beast from air. So it plays an important role. And then for Monday, please read the next two chapters, 7 and 8. Here's the first question for you guys. We'll use this to get into our discussion. So in these two chapters, the boys are constantly afraid of this beast, or beastie as they call it. So what literally are the beasts in each chapter? And how does this beast and the fear of it change the power dynamics between Ralph and Jack? And then finally, Simon has this line, maybe the beast is only us. What does he mean by that? Okay, but we'll start with this first part. What actually are the literal beasts that are seen in these two chapters? What do the boys actually see that they identify as the beast? Well, we're not sure. Well, it's called Beast from Water. So where is the beast seen? Right, coming out of the water, and it's this shadowy shape. Maybe an easier question might be in Beasts from Air. What there is literally the beast? Yes, Colin.
I think it was a kind of bird, maybe.
It wasn't a bird, and I understand that because it is a little bit confusing, the description of it. But it's not a bird. Anna, what do you think it is?
It's a guy that has a parachute on, right? He's
Yeah,
just hanging in
exactly.
the tree.
Mm-hmm. So, let's just take a look at that description because it becomes important later on, and it's a little bit convoluted to understand. And then we'll go back to Beast from Water. So this is in chapter 6, the second paragraph. We'll look at what's actually happening here. A sliver of moon rose over the horizon, hardly large enough to make a path of light, even when it sat right down on the water. But there were other lights in the sky that moved fast, winked, or went out, though not even a faint popping came down from the battle fought at 10 miles height. Okay? So we just pause and say, there are lights in the sky, moving fast, 10 miles up, probably 2 airplanes in a dogfight. But a sign came down from the world of grown-ups. It's also another interesting thought. This is a sign. The beast is a sign from the land of grown-ups. Though at the time there was no child awake to read it. There was a sudden bright explosion and corkscrew trail across the sky, then darkness again and stars. So explosion is probably one of the planes being destroyed. There was a speck above the island, a figure dropping swiftly beneath a parachute, a figure that hung with dangling limbs. So the pilot ejected from the plane, dangling limbs, so he's probably after he was ejected, he was already dead. The changing winds of various altitudes took the figure where they would. Then 3 miles up, the wind steadied and bore it in a descending curve around the sky and swept it in a great slant across the reef and the lagoon toward the mountain. The figure fell and crumpled among the blue flowers of the mountainside, but now there was a gentle breeze at this height too, and the parachute flopped and banged and pulled. So the figure, with feet that dragged behind it, slid up the mountain. Yard by yard, puff by puff, the breeze hauled the figure through the blue flowers, over the boulders and red stones, till it lay huddled among the shattered rocks of the mountaintop. Here the breeze was fitful and allowed the strings of the parachute to tangle and festoon, and the figure sat, its helmeted head between its knees, held by a complication of lines. When the breeze blew, the lines would strain taut, and some accident of this pull lifted the head and chest upright, so that the figure seemed to peer across the brow of the mountain. Then, each time the wind dropped, the lines would slacken, and the figure bow forward again, sinking its head between its knees. So far as the stars moved across the sky, the figure sat on the mountaintop and bowed and sank and bowed again. So it's a sort of eerie description. This corpse, this pilot killed in action, floats down in his parachute, lands on the mountaintop, and the cords of the parachute get tangled up. When a strong wind blows, the parachute fills up, the cords get pulled taut, and the way that they're arranged, this corpse kind of sits up. So the parachute cords are bringing him up, and then when the wind dies down, he kind of sinks down again. So there's an inanimate body, but when the wind comes in, he kind of like leans up, leans down, leans up, leans down, almost like an animatronic, or like this. In a way, it's kind of a moving though dead. You could understand how a little kid who saw this would be pretty freaked out by it. Anyone remember who sees the parachutist's corpse? Claudia?
Sam and Eric.
Good, yeah, it's the twins, Sam and Eric, who see it, get scared out of their mind, and run down the mountain to warn the others. Oh my God, there's this, beastie up on top of the mountain. We just saw him with our own eyes. Okay. Let's backtrack a bit, though, and go back to chapter 5. So the last time we talked about Lord of the Flies, Jack had done something wrong and also something helpful. So what was the last thing we talked about? How did he screw up but also help out the other boys on the island? How about Hannah?
Jack, his crew of boys are supposed to be the hunters, but they're also supposed to maintain the fire, the signal fire. So instead they just went out hunting and forgot about the fire, and it went out when there was a boat that went by.
Yeah, exactly. Good. So they come back with meat, but they're still stuck on this island, leaving Ralph frustrated that they're not following the rules that he established as chief. So chapter 5, we really start to see conflict between Jack and Ralph deepen. Ralph's starting to recognize his limitations as chief. There are a lot of good descriptions in that chapter of him like noticing the problems of being a leader. I'll just read one of them. He's talking to the crowd, especially the little ones. And this passage, it has some potty humor, but it's also making a point about how it can be a challenge to get people to do what you want. So I'll read this passage, and my question is, why is he getting so frustrated? What's the problem here? This is on the bottom of page 72 if you're following along in the book. He, Ralph, paused and cleared his throat. There's another thing. We chose those rocks right along beyond the bathing pool as a lavatory. That was sensible, too. The tide cleans the place up. You little ones know about that. There were sniggers here and there, and swift glances. Now people seem to use anywhere, even the shelters and the platforms. You little ones, when you're getting fruit, if you're taken short, the assembly roared. Taken short is just English slang for if you need to go to the bathroom. I said if you're taken short and you keep away from the fruit. That's dirty. Laughter rose again. I said that's dirty. He plucked at his stiff gray shirt. That's really dirty. If you're taken short, you go right along the beach to the rocks. See? Piggy held out his hands for the conch, but Ralph shook his head. His speech was planned point by point. We've all got to use the rocks again. This place is getting dirty. Okay, so again, why is he getting frustrated? What's happening that's not working? And what's the disconnect between Ralph and the rest of the tribe? Ava.
Ralph is getting frustrated because no one is taking him seriously.
And what he's saying is important, but look at the disconnect between what he's saying and how it's received. He's making this good point that like you can't go to the bathroom where you eat, where you sleep. You need to go somewhere else. But the little ones see that and they're just like, he's talking about going to the bathroom, totally missing the point, even though like it's a moment where like they need to stop giggling, they need to stop like being immature, and they need to realize that like, hey, this is important. You can't do that. It's unsanitary. But they're little kids. Like they just don't get it. If any of you have ever babysat like particularly difficult children, you might know how this feels where you're trying to like get this little kid to do something they need to do, but instead they're just running around, ignoring the rules, doing whatever they want and laughing at things that aren't really funny. Same thing happening here. So what you see is like a leader trying to communicate to the people following him, and then the kind of dumb, unwashed masses who are just missing the point and doing whatever they want, and it's just not clicking that if they want to survive and they want to live in an organized society, they got to follow the rules. They can't just do whatever they want in the moment. So that leads to long lists of complaints that Ralph has, and Jack eventually gets annoyed and is like, okay, that's enough things. Stop talking. We want to have fun on this island. We don't want to be told what to do. So we see like Ralph reacts to that by saying, no, like we have rules. That's where we get this line. It's on page 83. The rules, shouted Ralph. You're breaking the rules, because Jack is speaking without the conch. Who cares? Ralph summoned his wits. Because the rules are the only thing we've got. Right? To me, this is like what the book is all about. Right? In what way is that true? How are the rules the only thing that they have? Yeah, Colin.
I would say it's like the only thing that's resembling something they had in their past lives. Like they don't have like the bathroom's like literally just a bunch of rocks. There's nothing that really connects them to their old lives except for like rules. And it's the kind of the thing that's remaining the same throughout the thing. So like if there's nothing if there's nothing from the previous life, what's stopping you from becoming a completely different person that could end up being worse than what it started. So
good, yeah, and it seems like a rule. Like it's not something real. You can't touch it. It just seems like something invented, and yet it's incredibly important in their survival. Ava, you want to build on that?
It's the only kind of structure they have left to their lives. So without it, they're just kind of all doing their own thing, and they have nothing to even base their life kind of off of.
Exactly. Like, what are you without the rules? Well, you're like this. You're like a little in, eating fruit, living in filth, hiding, scared of the beast, right? And Golding's point is kind of like that's what life is like without civilization and without rules. Just madness and anarchy. And the boys all erupt into anarchy after that speech. They start dancing, they start chanting, they start acting like wild people. And Ralph and Piggy are kind of left by the side, kind of not really knowing what to do. All this, connects to the beast as well. So how did the beast kind of lead to all this chaos? And what exactly does Simon mean when he says maybe the beast is just us? Claudia?
I think that it kind of shows that the longer they're on the island, the more they're kind of falling into this thing where they believe the beast and are fearing the beast. And I think that what Simon means when he's saying that like the beast is within them is that what they're really scared of is just like they're becoming more violent and savage, and like it's not really a beast that they're like more scared of like the beast within themselves that's coming out of them, and they're seeing it coming out of themselves, and that's why the longer they're on the island, the more they're seeing that.
Yeah, well put. So what's, they're seeing this outside shadowy entity they're calling the beast, but that's all it is. It's just a shadow. Maybe it's a snake. It's a guy who parachuted out of his plane. It's not the real beast. The real beast is this attitude in Jack that who cares about the rules? I just want to hunt, right? I want to do what feels good in the moment. I'll end by pointing out Percival Weems Madison, who ends the chapter. Percival is a littleman. We see him in the beginning or in the middle of this chapter. They talk to him, and Ralph asks for his name, and he says, Percival Weems Madison, the Vicarage, Harcourt, St. Anthony, Hants, telephone, tele. And then he comes back at the end of the chapter. He's just this littleman who's crying constantly. And the last paragraph of chapter 5 is, a thin wail out of the darkness chilled them and set them grabbing for each other. Then the wail arose, remote and unearthly, and turned to an inarticulate gibbering. Percival Weems Madison of the Vicarage, Harcourt St. Anthony, lying in the long grass, was living through circumstances in which the incantation of his address was powerless to help him. So first of all, why does he keep repeating his address when he's talked to? They just asked his name, but he just keeps muttering this over and over again. Why is that? Ava?
Sometimes when kids are little, their moms or dads will make them like recite stuff, so then if they ever get lost, they just keep on saying it, like their phone number, their address, their full name. So since somebody's talking to him and asking him what his name is and he's lost, he's probably just reciting what he was told to do.
Yeah, very good. And then how does that help us make sense of the last line? He's living through circumstances in which the incantation of his address was powerless to help him. Colin, you want to take that on?
Yeah, because there's no one that's going to recognize it, and there's no way to get communication to the people. Basically, they're isolated in a way that there's no way getting out of it except for someone just chancing, like, oh, there's a silent. Oh, wait, there's distress signal, or there's these bunch of kids, and like in disgusting conditions. Should we help them, or should we just stay away? And it's like just the people who feel brave enough or compassionate enough to go and see what's going on.
Yeah, excellent. I mean, we see with this kind of his incantation, which is basically like a spell, something magical that you say out loud. The incantation worked when he was in England and lost and talking to a police officer, but it doesn't work here, right? Out in the state of nature. But also it's his identity, right? He's trying to assert that this is who I am. I'm a person who, I have a name that my parents gave me. I'm at this address, but, is that meaningful anymore? Is he really Percival? He's just, now a member of the tribe out in the wilderness. So these traces of civilization, of England, of being like proper English boys, that's very quickly starting to erode. We also see trust in Ralph starting to erode at the end of chapter 6. He keeps bossing everyone around as they're like poking around at this rock formation, right? He tells them, I'm chief, we've got to make certain. Can't you see the mountain? There's no single signal showing. There may be a ship out there. Are you all off your rockers? Mutinously, the boys fell silent or muttering. So it also seems like Ralph's control and the faith in him as leader is starting to loosen. Okay, we can end there. Any final questions or last comments about Lord of the Flies? Okay, please read the next 2 chapters for Monday, and I'll talk to you guys then. Have a fantastic weekend.